Well, I might have just gone right over the edge as far as this whole retirement thing goes. Back when I was a kid, there was this guy. He was a very cool guy. He used to work with my dad. He actually, no, it's not true. There's a long story about how we knew him. I won't go into that, but he used to work down at the old GM plant back in the day when they built the 55 Chevys and such as that. When he retired, went down in his basement and nailed the lids to baby food jars up to the rafters or the floor joists overhead. Sorted out his nuts, bolts, and screws into separate jars according to size and metric or standard and all that. And then he would label each one and then he would screw it up into the rafters. So his basement was just full of baby food jars. He could walk in there and find anything he wanted just like immediately. Well, I didn't go quite that bad. I bought this big shelf back there, which I showed you the other day I was putting together, and it's got all these little trays that go with it. My thinking was I was going to grab all this junk here and dump it in trays and set it back there, but as it turns out, the sorting bug got to me. So now I'm starting out with nuts, bolts, little nuts, washers, bigger washers, kind of junk, kind of this size bolt, little size bolt, big bolt. I think I've got one around here with even bigger bolts. You see where this is going. Yeah, which is not a bad thing. I mean, it's the kind of thing that, you know, I always wished that I would be the kind of person that would have the amount of time it took to sort out all your little washers and put them in a separate container. And now that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm picking up these little tofu trays full of various stuff and going through it and sorting out nuts and bolts and all sorts of things. So I don't know what to say about myself except that I may have gone over the edge in some sort of a way, but I don't think it's a very bad thing. In fact, I think it's an awesome thing. You know, I will in the future create a lot more space when I clean out all this stuff, and I hopefully will be able to locate nuts, bolts, screws, things of that nature. That's the plan. Anyway, I thought I'd give you the report from where we are today. Hope y'all are having a nice day. Click. Okay, so I've almost cleaned off one shelf. This is what I got out of that. Nuts, small screws, small nuts, washers, smaller washers, bigger washers, screws, odd pieces of metal, bushings, a little bit smaller screws, a little bit larger screws. These are washers and nuts. A lot of these are lock nuts. These are smaller washers, wing nuts, hooks, and wood screws of all sorts. And this is kind of like springs, and this is stuff that doesn't go anywhere that I hadn't quite figured out what to do yet. That's some old Volkswagen pieces back there, and some Volkswagen bumper bolts, and some saw blades, and some door hinges. And I haven't started this shelf yet. So this is time consuming. It's rewarding, but it's also kind of makes me think I wouldn't mind taking a break and getting back to eat. I might come back to this a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about sorting. I sorted everything on those shelves, and a few things that were back on those shelves. I have about this many trays left over, and I've used up about that much space so far. And that's mostly washers, nuts, bolts, screws, big screws, little screws, big washers, little washers. The stuff on the top is stuff that, you know, that people have reminded me of that saying about if you don't use it for a certain amount of time, you might as well throw it away because you'll never need it. Some of that stuff is kind of in that category. And then again, you know, there's a whole bucket of muffler clamps that I haven't used, but if I ever needed one, they do cost money. There's a whole bucket of pulleys, belt pulleys, which I haven't used, but I might need one. There is some other things that's kind of oddly shaped pieces of metal, which what I might do is take all that stuff, dump it in a big bucket, and put it out in my metal bin. Most of that stuff's down there, and that's a good candidate for not being in here, just because Like I said, that stuff I might not use that much. But progress is being made. I'm going to stop because Honey Baby has been away for a couple days on a camping trip. She's coming home in a little while, so I want to get cleaned up for her arrival. So, but man, look at that empty space. That's amazing. I'm just saying.